This play is called Our Town. It was written by Thornton Wilder, directed by a Miss Susie Jeffords, assistant directed by Ricky Meza, and sponsored by a Dr. Albert at Soul Orthodontics. In it, you will see Willow Sutton Coates as Emily, Apollo Wells as George, and many others. The name of the town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, just across the Massachusetts line. Latitude 42 degrees, 40 minutes. Longitude 37 degrees, 70 minutes. The first act shows a day in our town. That day is May 7th, 1901. The time, just before dawn. The sky is beginning to show some streaks of light over in the east there, beyond our mountain. The morning star always gets wonderful bright the minute before it has to go, doesn't it? Well, I'd better show you how our town lies. Up here is Main Street. Way back there is the railway station. Tracks go that way. Polish Town is across the tracks and some connect families. Right over there is the Congregational Church. Across the street's the Presbyterian. Methodist and Unitarian are over there. Town hall and post office combined. Jail's in the basement. You know, Brian once made a speech from those very steps there. Here's the drugstore, and there's Mr. Morgan's grocery store. Most everybody in town manages to look into those two stores at least once a day. Public school's over yonder, and high school is still farther over. 9:15 mornings, noontimes, and 3 o'clock afternoons, the whole town can hear a yelling and screaming from those schoolyards. This is our doctor's house, Doc Gibbs, and this is the back door. Right there's some scenery for those of you who think they have to have scenery. And this is Mrs. Gibbs' garden. Corn, peas, beans, hollyhocks, heliotrope, and a whole lot of burdock. In those days, our newspaper would come out twice a week, the Grover's Corner Sentinel. This is Editor Webb's house, and this is Mrs. Webb's garden. It's a lot like Miss Gibbs, only it's got a lot of sunflowers too. And right here is a big butternut tree. Nice town, you know what I mean? No one very remarkable's ever come out of it, so far as we know. The earliest tombstones over there in the cemetery say 1670, 1680. They're Grovers and Cartwrights and Gibbses and Herseys. Same names that are around here now. Well, like I said, it's about dawn. The only lights on in town are across the tracks where a Polish mother has just had twins, and in the Joe Crowell house where Joe Jr. is getting ready to deliver the paper, and down at the depot where Shorty Hawkins is getting ready so as to deliver to flag the 545 for Boston. Naturally, out in the country and all around, there have been lights on for some time, what with milking and so on, but town people sleep late. Another day has begun. There's Doc Gibbs, coming down Main Street now, coming back from that baby case, and there's his wife, Mrs. Gibbs, coming downstairs to make breakfast. Doc Gibbs died in 1930. His wife died first a long time ago, in fact. She went out to visit her daughter, Rebecca, who married an insurance man in Canton, Ohio, and died there, pneumonia. She was Julia Hersey, before she married Doc Gibbs, over there in the Congregational Church. In our town, we like to know the facts about everybody. And there's Miss Webb, coming downstairs to get her breakfast too. And here comes Joe Crowell, getting ready to deliver Mr. Webb's Sentinel, and that's Doc Gibbs. Got that call at 1:30 this morning.
Morning, Doc Gibbs.
Morning, Joe.
Somebody been sick, Doc?
No, pair of twins born over in Polish Town.
Do you want your paper now?
Yes, I'll take it. Anything serious going on in the world since Wednesday?
Yes, sir. My school teacher, Miss Foster, is getting married to a fellow over in Concord.
I declare. How do you boys feel about that?
Well, of course, it's none of my business. But I think if a person starts out to be a teacher, she ought to stay one.
How's your knee, Joe?
It's fine. Never think about it anymore. Only, like you said, it tells me when it's gonna rain.
What's it telling you today? Going to rain?
No, sir?
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Knee ever make a mistake?
No, sir.
I want to tell you something about that boy, Joe Crowell there. Joe was awful bright. Graduated from high school here, head of his class. So he got a scholarship to Massachusetts Tech. Graduated head of his class there too. It was all written up in the Boston papers at the time. Going to be a great engineer, Joe was, but the war broke out and he died in France. All of that education for nothing.
Get up, Bessie. What's the matter with you today?
And here comes Howie Newsom, delivering the milk.
Morning, Doc.
Morning, Howie.
Is somebody sick?
Pair of twins born over to Mrs. Gorskowski's.
Twins, this town's getting bigger every year.
Going to rain, Howie?
No, fine eight. That'll burn through.
Hello, Bessie. How old is she, Howie?
Going on 17. Bessie's all mixed up about the route ever since the Lockhart stopped taking their quart of the milk every day. She wants to leave them the same, keeps going to be the whole trip up.
Good morning, Howie.
Morning, Mrs. Gibbs. Doc's just coming down the street.
Is he? Seems like you're late today.
Yep, something went wrong with the separator. Don't know what it was. Doc?
Howie.
Children, time to get up.
Get up, Bessie.
George, Rebecca. Everything all right, Frank?
Yes, I declare, easy as kittens.
Bacon will be ready in a minute. Sit down and drink your coffee. You can catch a couple hours sleep this morning, can't you?
Mrs. Wetworth's coming at 11. I guess I know what it's about, too. Her stomach ain't what it ought to be.
All told, you won't get more than 3 hours sleep. Frank Gibbs, I don't know what's going to become of you. I wish I could get you away to someplace and get you a real rest. I think it would do you good.
Emily, time to get up. Wally, 7 o'clock.
I declare, you've got to speak to George. Seems like something's come over him lately. I can't even get him to chop me some wood.
Is he sassy to you?
No, he just whines. All he thinks about is that baseball. George, Rebecca, you'll be late for school. George.
George, look sharp.
Yes, Pa.
Don't you remember calling you? I guess I'll go upstairs and get 40 weeks.
Children, you'll be late for school. Wally, wash yourself good or I'll come up there and do it myself.
Ma, what dress shall I wear?
Don't make a noise. Your father's been out all night and needs his rest. I washed and ironed that blue gingham for you special.
Oh, Ma, I hate that dress.
Oh, hush up with you.
Every day I go to school dressed like some sick turkey.
Now, Rebecca, you always look very nice.
Ma, George is throwing soap at me.
I'll come up there and stop the both of you. That's what I'll do.
We've got a factory in our town, too. Hear it? Makes blankets. Cartwrights own it, and it brung them a fortune.
Children, now I won't have it. Breakfast is an important meal as any other, and I won't have you guys gobbling like wolves. It will stunt your growth. That's a fact. Wally, put away your book.
Aw, Ma, by 10 o'clock I'm gonna know all about Canada.
You know the rules as well as I do. No books at the table. As for me, I'd rather have my kids healthy than bright.
I'm both, Mama. You know I am. I'm the brightest girl in school for my age. I have a wonderful memory.
Eat your breakfast.
I'm bright too. When I'm looking at my stamp collection.
I'll speak to your father about it when he's rested. Seems to me 25 cents a week's good enough for a boy your age. I declare, I don't know how you spend it all.
Aw, Ma, I got a lot of things to buy.
Strawberry phosphates, that's what you spend it on.
I don't see how Rebecca comes to have so much money. She has more than $1.
I was shaping it up gradual.
Now, dear, I think it's very nice to spend some every now and then.
Oh, Ma, do you know what I love most in the world? Do ya? Money.
Eat your breakfast.
Well, walk fast, but don't run. And Wally, put the pants up to the knee. Emily, stand up straight.
Tell Miss Forrester I sent her my best congratulations. Can you remember that?
Yes, Ma.
Rebecca, pick up your feet. Here, chick, chick, chick. Here, chick, chick, chick. What's the matter with you? Fight, 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 that's all you do. You don't belong to me. Where'd you come from? Good morning, Myrtle. How's your cold?
I still have a little tingle in my throat. I told Charles I don't know if I would go to choir practice tonight since it wouldn't be any use.
Have you tried singing over your voice?
Yes, but I can't do that and somehow still stay on key. While I rest myself, I thought I would string some beans for the winter.
Let me help you. Beans have been good this year. Now, Myrtle, I've got to tell you something, because if I don't tell somebody, I'll burst.
Why, Julia Gibbs?
Did one of those secondhand furniture men come to see you last Friday?
No.
Well, he called on me. First, I thought he was a patient wanting to see Dr. Gibbs, and well, he wormed his way into my parlor, and Myrtle Webb, he offered me $350 for Grandmother Wentworth's highboy, as I'm sitting here.
Why, Julia Gibbs?
I know, that old thing. Why, it was so big, I almost didn't know where to put it, and I almost gave it to Cousin Hester Wilcox.
You're gonna take it, aren't you?
I don't know.
$350? What has come over yourself?
Well, if I could get the doctor to take it and go away someplace on a real trip, I'd sell it like that. You know, Myrtle, it's always been the dream of my life to see Paris, France. I know, it sounds crazy, but I've always been promising myself that if I ever got the chance.
Well, what did the doctor feel about this?
Well, you know him. I haven't heard a serious word out of him since I've known him. No, he said it would make him discontented with Grover's Corners to go traipsing about Europe. Better let well enough alone, he says. Every 2 years, we make a trip to the battlegrounds of the Civil War, and that's not true for anybody, he says.
Well, Dr. Gibbs just admires the way that Mr. Webb knows everything about Napoleon. Likewise, for Mr. Webb admires the way that Dr. Gibbs knows everything about the Civil War. He just has a good mind to give up Napoleon and move over to the Civil War. Only that Dr. Gibbs, being the greatest expert in the country, just makes him despair.
Yes, it's a fact. Dr. Gibbs is never so happy as when he's at Antietam or Gettysburg. The times I've spent walking over those hills, Myrtle, pacing it all out and looking at every bush like we were gonna buy it.
Well, if that second-hand man is really serious about buying it, Julia, you sell it. And then you'll go see Paris, France, all right. Just keep dropping hits from time to time, and that's how I got to see the Atlantic Ocean, you know?
I'm sorry I mentioned it, only it seems to me that once in your life you've got to see a country where they don't talk in English and don't even want to.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. Now, we're going to skip a few hours, but first we want to know a little bit more information about the town. A kind of scientific account, you might say. So I've asked Professor Willard of our state university to sketch in a few details of our past history here. Oh, is Professor Willard here? May I introduce Professor Willard of our state university. A few brief notes, Professor. Unfortunately, our time is limited.
Grover's Corners. Let me see. Grover's Corners lies on the old Pleistocene granite of the Appalachian Range. I may say it's some of the oldest land in the world. We're very proud of that. A shelf of Devonian basalt crosses it with vestiges of Mesozoic shale and some sandstone outcroppings, but that's all more recent, 200, 300 million years old. Some highly interesting fossils have been found. I may say, unique fossils, 2 miles out of town in Silas Peckham's cow pasture. They can be seen at the museum at our university at any time. That is, any reasonable time. Shall I read some of Professor Gruber's notes on the meteorological situation, means precipitation, etc.?
Afraid we won't have time for that, Professor. We might have a few brief notes on the history of man here.
Yes. Anthropological data, early Amerindian stock, Cotahuasi tribes, no evidence before the 10th century of this era, now entirely disappeared. Possible traces in 3 families, migration towards the end of the 17th century of English brachiocephalic blue-eyed stock. For the most part, since then some Slavic
And the
Mediterranean...
population, Professor Willard.
Within the town limits, 2,640.
Oh, just a moment, Professor.
Yes, indeed. The population at the moment is 2,642. The postal district brings in 507 more, making it a total of 3,149. Morality and birth rate's constant, by McPherson's gauge, 6.032.
Thank you very much, Professor. We're all very much obliged to you, I'm sure.
Not at all, ma'am. Not at all.
This way, Professor, and thank you again. Now, on to the political and social report. Editor Webb. Oh, Mr. Webb?
He'll be here in a minute. He just cut his hand while eating an apple.
Thank you, Mrs. Webb.
Charles, everybody's waiting.
Mr. Webb is publisher and editor of the Grover's Corner Sentinel. That's our local paper, you know.
Well, I don't have to tell you that we're run here by a board of selectmen. All males are at the age of 21. Women vote indirect. We're lower middle class, sprinkling of professional men. 10% of laborers. Politically, we're 86% Republican, 6% Democrat, 4% Socialist. Rest, indifferent. Religiously, we are 85% Protestant, 12% Catholic, rest, indifferent.
Have you any comments, Mr. Webb?
Very ordinary town if you ask me. A little better behaved than most. Probably a lot duller, but our young people here seem to like it well enough. 90% of them graduating from high school settled down right here to live, even when they've been away to college.
Now, is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask Mr. Webb anything about the town?
Is there much drinking in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, I don't know what you call much. Saturday nights the farmhands meet down in Ellery Greeneck's stable and holler some. We've got 1 or 2 town drunks, but they always have remorses every time an evangelist comes to town. No, ma'am, I'd say liquor ain't a regular thing in the home here, except for the medicine chest. Right good for a snake bite, you know? Always was.
Is there anyone aware
Oh, come forward, will you? Where we can all hear you. What were you saying?
Is there anyone aware of the social injustice and industrial inequality?
Oh, yes. Everybody is something terrible. Always talking about who's rich and who's poor.
Then why don't they do something about it?
Well, I don't know. I guess we're all hunting like everybody else for a way the diligent and sensible can rise to the top and the lazy and quarrelsome can sink to the bottom. But it ain't easy to find. Meanwhile, we do all we can to help those that can't help themselves and those that can we leave alone. Are there any other questions?
Oh, Mr. Webb, is there any culture or love of beauty in Grover's Corners?
Well, ma'am, there ain't much. Not in the sense you mean. Come to think of it, there's some girls that play piano at high school commencement, but they ain't happy about it. No, ma'am, there ain't much, but maybe this is the place to tell you we've got a lot of pleasures of a kind here. We like the sun coming up over the mountain in the morning, and we notice a good deal about the birds. We pay a lot of attention to them. And we watch the change of the seasons. Yes, everybody knows about those, but those other things, you're right, ma'am. We like Robinson Crusoe and the Bible, and Handel's Largo, we all know that, and The Whistler's Mother. Those are just about as far as we go.
So I thought. Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Now, we'll have to go back to the town. All 2,642 have had their dinners and all of the dishes have been washed. There's an early afternoon calm in our town. The buzzing and humming from the schoolyards. The horses are dozing at the hitching posts. You all know how it is. Doc Gibbs is in his office, tapping people and making them say ah, and Mr. Webb over there is mowing his lawn. You know, 1 man in 10 thinks it's a privilege to push his own lawnmower. No, sir, it's later than I thought. There are children coming home from school already.
I can't, Lois. I've got to go home and help my mother. I promise.
Emily, walk simply. Who do you think you are today?
Oh, Papa, you're so terrible to me. 1 minute you're telling me to stand up straight, and the next minute you're calling me names. I just don't listen to you.
Golly, I never got a kiss from such a great lady before.
Excuse me, Miss Forrest.
Go out and play in the fields, young man. You have no business playing baseball on Main Street.
Awfully sorry, Miss Forrest. Hello, Emily.
Hello.
You made a fine speech in class.
Well, I was ready to talk about the Monroe Doctrine, but at the last minute, Miss Corcoran asked me to speak about the Louisiana Purchase instead. I worked awfully hard on both of them.
Gee, it's funny, Emily. From my window up there, I can just see your head nights when you're doing homework over in your room.
Why can you, George?
Yeah, you certainly do stick to it. I don't see how you can sit still that long. I guess you like school.
Well, I always feel that it's something you have to go through.
Yeah,
I don't mind it, really. It passes the time.
yeah.
Emily, what do you think? We might work out a kind of telegraph from your window to mine, and maybe every once in a while you could give me a kind of hint or two about one of those algebra problems? I don't mean the answers, Emily. Of course not. Just some little hint.
Well, I think hints are allowed, so if you get stuck, George, you whistle to me, and I'll give you some hints.
You're just naturally bright, I guess.
I figure that it's just the way a person is born.
Yeah, but you see, I want to be a farmer. And my Uncle Luke says that whenever I'm ready, I can come over and work on his farm, and if I'm any good, I can just gradually have it.
You mean the house and everything?
Yeah. Well, I better be getting out to the baseball field. Thanks for the talk, Emily. Good afternoon, Miss Webb. Good afternoon, George. So long, Emily.
So long, George.
Emily, come and help me string these beans for the winter. So, George Gibbs let himself have a real conversation with you. Why? He's all grown. How old would George be now?
Oh, I don't know.
Let's see, he must be about 16.
Mama, I made a speech in class today and I was very good.
You must recite it for your father at supper. What was it about?
The Louisiana Purchase. It was like silk off a spool. I'm going to be making speeches all my life. Mama, are these big enough?
Try getting them a little bigger if you can.
Mama, will you answer me a question serious?
Seriously, dear, not serious.
Seriously, will you?
Of course I will.
Mama, am I good looking?
Why, of course you are. You have such good features. All my children do. I'd be ashamed if they hadn't.
Oh, Mama, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, am I pretty?
Yes, you're pretty. You have such a cute, gorgeous face. Now, enough of that. I've never heard such foolishness.
Oh, Mama, you never tell us the truth about anything.
I am telling the truth.
Mama, were you pretty?
Oh, yes, I was. I was the prettiest girl in town next to Manny Cartwright.
But Mama, you have to say something about me. Am I pretty enough to get anybody, to get people interested in me?
Emily, you make me tired. You're pretty for all normal purposes. Now, come along and bring that bowl with you.
Oh, Mama, you're no help at all. Thank you, that'll do. Now I'll have to interrupt again here. Thank you, Mrs. Webb, thank you, Emily. Now, there are a few more things we want to explore about this town. I think it's a good time to tell you that the banker Cartwrights have just begun building a new bank in Grover's Corners. Had to go to Vermont for the marble, we're sorry to say, but they've asked a friend of mine what they should put in the cornerstone for people 1,000 years from now to dig up. We're putting in a copy of the New York Times and the Grover's Corners Sentinel. We're awfully interested in this because some scientific fellas have figured out how to cover all of that reading matter with a glue, a type of silicate glue that will make it keep 1,000, 2,000 years from now. We're putting in the Bible, a copy of the Constitution of the United States, and a copy of William Shakespeare's plays. What do you say, folks? What do you think? You know, Babylon once had 2 million people in it, and all we know about them is the names of some kings, the copies of wheat contracts, and the contracts of the sale of slaves. But every night, all of those families would sit down for dinner, and the father would come home from work, and the smoke went up the chimney. Same as here. And even in Greece and Rome, all we know about the real life of the people is what we can piece together out of the joking poems of the time and the comedies they wrote for the theater back then. So I'm going to have a copy of this play put in the cornerstone so that people 1,000 years from now will know a few simple things about us. More than the Treaty of Versailles or the Lindenberg Flight. See what I mean? So that people 1,000 years from now will know that this is the way we were in the provinces of New York at the beginning of the 20th century. This is the way we were in our growing up, and in our marrying, and in our living, and in our dying. Well, a good deal of time has gone by. You can hear choir practice going on in the Congregational Church. The children are at home doing their schoolwork. The day is running down like a tired clock.
Now look here, everybody. Music come into the world to give pleasure. Loud, softer.
Softer. Get it out of your heads that music's only good when it's loud. You leave loudness to the Methodists. You couldn't even beat them even if you wanted. Now again, tenors.
Emily.
Hello.
Hello.
I can't work at all. The moonlight's so wonderful.
Emily, did you get the third problem?
Which?
The third?
Why, yes, George, that's the easiest of them all.
I just don't see it. Emily, could you give me a hint?
I'll tell you one thing. The answer's in yards.
In yards? How do you mean?
In square yards?
Oh, in square yards.
Yes, George. Don't you see?
Yeah.
In square yards of wallpaper?
Wallpaper. Oh, I see. Thanks a lot, Emily.
You're welcome. My, isn't the moonlight so wonderful? And choir practice still going on? I think if you hold your breath, you can hear the train all the way from Cook. Hear it?
What do you know?
Well, I guess I better get back and try and work.
Good night, and thanks.
Good night.
Before I forget it, how many of you will be able to come in Tuesday afternoon and sing at Fred Hersey's wedding? Show your hands. That'll be fine. That'll be right nice. We'll do the same music we did for James Robage's last month. Now we'll do Art Thou Weary, Art Thou Languid. It's a question, ladies and gentlemen. Make it talk. Ready?
Oh, George, can you come down a minute?
Yes, boss.
Make yourself comfortable, George. I'll only keep you a minute. George, how old are you?
I'm 16, almost 17.
What do you want to do after school's over?
Why, you know, Pop, I want to be a farmer on Uncle Luke's farm.
You'll be willing, will you, to get up early and milk and feed the stock, and you'll be able to hoe and hay all day?
Sure I will. What do you mean, Pop?
Well, George, while I was in my office today, I heard a funny sound. And what do you think it was? It was the sound of your mother chopping wood. There you see your mother getting up early, cooking meals all day long, washing and ironing, and still she has to go out to the backyard and chop wood. I guess she just got tired of asking you. She just gave up and decided it was easier to do it herself. And you eat her meals, and you put on the clothes she keeps nice for you, and you run off and play baseball. Like she's some hired girl we keep around the house, but we don't like very much. Well, I knew all I had to do was call it to your attention. Here's a handkerchief, George. Son, I've decided to raise your spending money 25 cents a week. Not for, of course, chopping wood for your mother, because that's a present you give her, but because you're getting older, and I imagine you'll find many things to do with it.
Thanks, Pop.
Tomorrow's your payday. You can count on it. Probably Rebecca feels she ought to have some more too. I wonder what could have happened to your mother. Choir practice never was as late as before.
It's only 8:30, Pa.
I don't know why she's in the old choir anyway. She hasn't any more voice than an old crow. Traipsing around the streets this hour of night. About time you're tired, don't you think?
Yes, Pa.
Good night, Martha. Good night, Mr. Foster. How come Mr. Webb to put it in the paper?
Hi, it's late.
Good night, Irma.
Myrtle Webb, would you look at that moon? Potato weather for sure.
Naturally, I didn't want to say a word about it in front of the others. But now that we're alone, it really is the worst scandal that ever was in this town. What? Simon Stimpson.
And Luella.
But Julia, to have the organist of a church drink and drunk year after year, you know he was drunk tonight.
Now, Luella, we all know about Mr. Simpson. We all know about the troubles he's been through. And Dr. Ferguson knows too. And if Dr. Ferguson decides to keep him up there in his job, the only thing the rest of us can do is just not to notice it.
Not to notice it, but it's getting worse.
No, it isn't, Nuella. It's getting better. I've been inside that choir twice as long as you have, and it's not ever so bad. Right, it's late. I better go. Those children will be up till all hours. Good night, Luella.
Can you get home safe, Luella?
Right as day. I can see Mr. Solmes scowling at the window now. You'd think we'd been to a dance the way these menfolk carry on.
Well, we had a real good time.
You're late enough,
Well, Frank, taking you later than usual.
and you're stopping at the corner to gossip with a lot of hens.
Don't be grouchy. Come out and smell the heliotrope in the moonlight. Isn't that lovely? What'd you do all the time I was away?
Oh, I read, as usual. What were the girls gossiping about tonight?
Oh, believe me, Frank, there is something to gossip about.
Simon Simpson far gone, was he?
Worst I've ever seen him. How will that end, Frank? Dr. Ferguson can't forgive him forever.
I guess I know more about Simon Simpson than anybody else in this town. Some people ain't made for small town life. I don't know how that'll end, but there's nothing we do about it, but just leave it alone. Come, get in.
No, not yet, Frank. I'm worried about you.
What are you worried about?
Well, I think it's my duty to make plans for you to get a real rest and change, and if I get that legacy, well, I'm gonna insist on it.
Now, Julia, there's no sense in going over that again.
Frank, you're just unreasonable.
Come on, Julia. It's getting late. Next thing you'll know, you catch a cold. I gave George a piece of my mind tonight. I reckon you'll have your wood chopped for a while anyway. No. Start getting upstairs.
Well, Frank, just seems like there's so many things to pick up now. You know, Mrs. Fairchild always locks her front door every night. All those people up that part of town do.
They're all getting citified. That's the trouble with them. They haven't got nothing fit to burgle, and everyone knows it.
Get out, Rebecca. There's only room for one at this window. You're always spoiling everything.
Well, let me look just a minute.
Use your own window.
I tried, but there's no moon there. George, do you know what I think? Do you? I think maybe the moon's getting nearer and nearer, and then there'll be a big explosion!
Rebecca, you don't know anything. If the moon were getting nearer, the men that sit up all night with telescopes would see it first, and they'd tell about it, and it'd be in all the newspapers.
George, is the moon shining on South America, Canada, and past the whole world?
Well, probably is.
"9:30. Most of the lights are out in Grover's Corners. No, there's Constable Warren trying a few doors on Main Street. And here comes Editor Webb after putting his newspaper to bed.
Good morning, Bill. Evening, Mr. Webb.
Quite a moon.
Yep.
All quiet tonight?
Simon Simpson's roaming around a little, just saw his wife coming back to hunt for him, so I looked the other way. There he is now.
Good evening, Simon. Townspeople have settled down for the night pretty well. Good evening. Yes, the townspeople have settled down for the night, Simon. I guess we better do the same. Can I walk along a ways with you? Good night.
I don't know how that's going to end, Mr. Webb.
He's seen a peck of trouble, one thing after another. Oh, Bill, if you see my boy smoking cigarettes, just give him a whirl, will ya? He thinks a lot of you.
I don't think he smokes no cigarettes, Mr. Webb. At least weighs not more than 2 or 3 a year.
Well, hope not. Good night, Bill.
Good night, Mr. Webb.
Who is that up there? Is that you, Myrtle?
No, it's me, Papa.
Why are you in bed?
I don't know. I just can't sleep yet, Papa. The moonlight's so wonderful, and the smell of Mrs. Gibbs' heliotrope. Can you smell it?
Yes. Haven't any troubles on your mind, have you, Emily?
Troubles, Papa? No.
Well, enjoy yourself, but don't let your mother catch you. Good night, Emily.
Good night, Papa.
I never told you about that letter Jane Crawford got from her minister when she was sick. He wrote Jane a letter, and on the envelope, the address went like this. It went, Jane Crawford, the Crawford Farms, Grover's Corners, Sutton County, New Hampshire, United States of America.
What's funny about that?
It doesn't end there. The United States of America, continent of North America, the Western Hemisphere, Earth, the solar system, the universe, the mind of God. That's what it said on the envelope.
What do you know?
And the postman brought it just the same.
What do you know?
That's all for the first act, friends. So we'll be moving on to Act 2. 3 years have gone by. Yes, the sun has come up over 1,000 times. Summers and winters have cracked the mountains a little bit more, and the rain has brought down some of the dirt. Some babies that weren't even born yet have begun talking regular sentences already. And a number of people who thought they were right young and spry have begun to notice that they can't bound up a flight of stairs without their heart fluttering a little. All that can happen in 1,000 days. Nature's been pushing and contriving in other ways too. A number of people have fallen in love and gotten married. Yes, the mountains have gotten away a few fractions of an inch. Millions of gallons of water have went by the mill, and here and there, a new home has been set up under a roof. Most everybody in the world gets married. You know what I mean? Most everyone climbs into their own graves married. The first act was called Daily Life. This act is called Love and Marriage. There's another act coming after this one. I reckon you can guess what that's about. So 3 years have gone by. It's July 7th, 1904, just after high school commencement. That's when most of our young people jump up to get married. Yes, as soon as they've passed their last examinations in solid geometry and Cicero's orientations, looks like they suddenly see themselves fit to be married. It's early morning. Only this time, it's been raining. It's been pouring and thundering. Miss Webb's garden and Miss Gibbs here, drenched. All of those bean poles and pea vines, drenched. Over there on Main Street, yesterday the rain looked like curtains being blown along. It may begin again any minute. There, you can hear the 5:45 for Boston. And here comes Mrs. Webb and Miss Gibb, come downstairs to make their breakfast, just as though it were any other ordinary day. Now, I don't have to tell any of the women in my audience that those ladies they see before them, both of those ladies cooked 3 meals a day. One of them for 20 years and the other one for 40. And no summer vacation. They brought up two children apiece, washed and cleaned the house, and never a nervous breakdown. It's like what one of those Middle West poets said. You've got to have life to love life, and you've got to love life to have it. Now, that's what they call a vicious cycle.
Get up, Bessie.
Here comes Howie Newsom, delivering the milk, and there's Cy Crowell, delivering the papers like his brothers before him.
Morning, Howie.
Morning, Si. Anything in the papers I had to know about?
Nothing much, except we're losing the best stand-up pitcher Groves we've ever had, George Gibbs.
I reckon he
He's
is.
hit our bases too.
Yep, mighty fine ball player. Whoa, Bessie. I guess I can stop and talk if I mind to.
I don't see how could he get anything like that, just get married. With you, Howie?
Can't tell, Si. Never had no talent that way. You're up early, Bill.
Seeing if there's anything I can do to prevent a flood. River's been rising all night.
Si Crowell is all worried about George Gibbs retiring from baseball.
Yes, sir, that's the way it goes. Back in '84, we had a player side, even George Gibbs couldn't touch him. Name of Hank Todd. Went down to Maine and became a parson. Wonderful ball player. Howie, how's the weather look to you?
Oh, think maybe it'll clear up for good.
Good morning, Howie. Think it's gonna rain today?
Morning, Mrs. Gibbs. It rained so heavily, I think it may clear up for good.
Certainly hope so.
How much do you want today?
Well, I'm gonna have a house full of relations, so looks to me I'll need 2 of milk and 3 of cream.
My wife says to tell you that we both hope they'll be very happy. Mrs. Gibbs, know they will.
Tell your wife I hope she gets there to the wedding.
She'll be there. She'll be there if she's kin. Morning, Mrs. Webb.
Good morning, Mr. Newsom. I know I told you 4 quarts of milk, but I was hoping you can spare me another.
Yes, and the two of cream?
Will it rain again today, Mr. Newsom?
Well, just saying to Mrs. Gibson how it may lighten up. Mrs. Newsom told me to tell you that we both hope they'll be very happy. Mrs. Webb, no, they will.
Thank you. And thank Mrs. Newsom. We're counting on seeing you guys at the wedding.
Yes, certainly. Couldn't miss that.
Come on, Bessie.
Well, Mom, the day has come. You're losing one of your chicks.
Frank Gibbs, don't you say another word. I feel like crying every minute. Sit down and drink your coffee.
The groom's up shaving himself, only there ain't an awful lot to shave. Whistling and singing like he's glad to leave us. Every now and then he says, I do, to the mirror, but it don't sound convincing to me.
I declare, I don't know how he'll get along. I've arranged his clothes and seen to it that he's put warm things on. Oh, Frank, they're too young. Emily won't think of such things. He'll catch his death of a cold within a week.
I was remembering my wedding morning, Julia.
Don't start that, Frank Gibbs.
I was the scaredest young fella in the state of New Hampshire. I thought I'd make a mistake for sure, and when I saw you coming down the aisle, you were the prettiest girl I've ever seen. The only trouble was, I'd never seen you before. There I was in the Congregational Church, marrying a total stranger.
And how do you think I felt? Oh, Frank, weddings are perfectly awful things. Farces, that's what they are. Here, I made something for you.
Why, Julia Hersey, French toast.
Tain't that hard to make, and I had to do something.
How'd you sleep last night, Julia?
Well, I heard a lot of the hours struck off.
Yes. I get a shock every time I think of George setting out to be a family man. That great giggling thing. I tell you, Julia, there's nothing so terrifying in the world as the sun. The relation between father and son is the darndest, awkwardest.
Well, mother and daughter's no picnic either.
They'll have their troubles, I suppose, but that's none of our business. Everyone has a right to their own troubles.
Yes, tain't natural to be lonesome. People are meant to go by life two by two.
Do you know one of the things I was scared of when I married you, Julia?
Go along with you.
I was scared we'd run out of material for conversation more than last us a few weeks. I was scared we'd run out and eat our meals in silence. That's a fact. Well, you and I have been conversing for more than 20 years now without any noticeable barren spells.
Well, good weather, bad weather. Tain't very choice, but I always find something to say. Did you hear Rebecca stirring around upstairs?
No. Only David and you, Rebecca, is managing everybody's business up there. I think she's hiding in her room. I got the impression she's crying.
For Lord's sakes, this has got to stop. Rebecca! Rebecca, come and get your breakfast.
Good morning, everybody. Only 5 more hours left to live.
George Gibbs, where are you going?
Just stepping across the grass to see my girl.
You put on your overshoes. It's raining torrents. You don't go out this house without you're prepared for it.
Ma, it's just a step.
You'll catch your death of a cold and cough all through the service.
George, do as your mother tells you.
From tomorrow on, you can go all about your business as you'd like, but while you're under my roof, you'll live wisely. Thank you. Take a cup of coffee first.
I'll be back in a minute. Good morning, Mother Webb.
Oh, goodness, you frightened me, George. Listen, I let you in for a minute out of the wet, but you know I can't invite you to stay.
Why not?
You know as well as I do, the groom can't see his bride on his wedding day, not unless he sees her in church.
Oh, that's just a superstition. Good morning, Mr. Webb.
Good morning, George.
Mr. Webb, you don't believe in that superstition, do you?
Well, there's a lot of common sense in some superstitions, George.
Many have frolicked in it, but you don't want to be the first to fly on the face of custom.
How is Emily?
Don't know. Haven't heard a sound out of her.
Emily's asleep.
No wonder we were up to all hours sewing and packing and... I'll tell you what, George. You sit here for a minute with Mr. Webb and take this cup of coffee. I'll go upstairs to see if Emily don't come down and surprise you. There's some bacon too, but don't be long about it.
Well, George, how are you?
Fine. I'm fine. Mr. Webb, what sense could there be in a superstition like that?
Well, on her wedding day, a girl's head apt to be full of clothes or one thing or another. Don't you think that's probably it?
Yes, I never thought of that.
A girl's apt to be a mite nervous on her wedding day, George.
I wish a fellow could get married without all that marching up and down.
Every man that's ever lived has felt that way about it, George. But it hasn't been any use. It's the women folk who've built up weddings, my boy. For a while now, women have it all their own. A man looks pretty small at a wedding, George. All those good women standing shoulder to shoulder, making sure the knot's tied in a mighty public way.
But you believe in it, don't you, Mr. Webb?
Oh yes, oh yes. Don't you misunderstand me, my boy. Marriage is a wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. And don't you forget that.
No, sir. Mr. Webb, how old were you when you got married?
Well, I'd been away to college and I'd taken some time to get settled. And Mrs. Webb wasn't much older than what Emily is. Oh, age hasn't much to do with it. Not compared to other things.
What were you gonna say, Mr. Webb?
Oh, I don't know. Was I gonna say something? George, I was thinking the other night of some advice my father gave me when I got married. Charles, he said, Charles, start out early showing who's boss. Just give an order, even if it don't make sense, just so she'll learn to obey. And if anything about your wife irritates you, her conversation or anything, just get up and leave the house. That'll make it clear to her. And, oh yes, he said, never, never let your wife know how much money you have. Never.
Mr. Webb, I don't think that I could.
So I took the opposite of my father's advice. And I've been happy ever since. And let that be a lesson to you, George. Never ask advice on personal matters. Ever. Are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
What?
Are you going to raise chickens on your farm?
Well, Uncle Luke's never been much interested, but I thought that maybe.
A book came into my office the other day on the philo system of raising chickens. I want you to read it. I'm thinking of beginning a small way myself. I'm putting an incubator in the cellar.
Charles, are you talking about that old incubator again? I thought you guys were talking about things worthwhile.
Well, if you want to give the boys some good advice, I'll go upstairs and leave you alone with them.
George, Emily has decided to come down and eat her breakfast. But she does not wish to see you. She sends you her love, though. See you at the wedding.
Goodbye?
Myrtle, I guess you don't know about that older superstition?
What do you mean, Charles?
Since the cavemen, no bridegroom should see his father-in-law on the day of the wedding nor near it. Now remember that.
Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Webb. Now, I'm gonna have to interrupt again here. You see, we want to know about how all of this began. This wedding, this plan to spend a lifetime with one another. I'm awfully interested in how big things like this begin. You know how it is. You're 21 or 22 and you make some decisions and then wish you're 70 and you've been a lawyer for 50 years and that white-haired lady at your side has eaten over 50,000 meals with you. How do big things like this begin? Well, George and Emily are going to show you the conversation they first had when they knew that as the saying goes, they were meant for one another. But first, I want you to try and remember what it was like to have been very young, and particularly the days when you first fell in love, when you were like a person sleepwalking, and you didn't quite see the street you were in, and you didn't quite hear everything that was said to you. You're just a little bit crazy. Will you remember that, please? Now, they'll be coming out of high school at 3 o'clock. George has just been elected president of junior class, and seeing as it's June, that means he'll be president of senior class all next year. And Emily has just been elected secretary and treasurer. I don't have to tell you how important that is. Now, here they are, coming down Main Street now.
I can't, Lois. I've got to go home. Ernestine, can you come over tonight and do Latin? Isn't that Cicero just the worst thing? Tell your mother you have to. Goodbye. Goodbye, Helen. Goodbye, Fred.
Could I carry your books home for you, Emily?
Why, thank you. It isn't far.
Excuse me just a minute, Emily. Say Bob, if I'm a little late, start practice anyway. And give her some long, high ones.
Goodbye, Lizzie.
Goodbye, Lizzie. I'm awfully glad you were elected too, Emily.
Thank you.
Emily, why are you mad at me?
I'm not mad at you.
You've been treating me so funny lately.
Well, since you asked, I might as well say it right out, George. Goodbye, Miss Corcoran.
Goodbye, Miss Corcoran. What is it?
I don't like the whole changes come over you in the last year. Well, up to a year ago, I used to like you a lot. And I used to watch you as you did everything, because we've been friends for so long. And then you began spending all your time at baseball, and it's like, you don't stop to talk to anybody, you don't. Not even your own family. And George, it's a fact. You've become awfully stuck up and conceited. All the girls say so. They may not say it to your face, but that's what they say about you behind your back. And it hurts me to hear them say it, but I've got to agree with them a little. Now, I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but I can't be sorry that I said it.
I'm glad that you said it, Emily. I never thought that such a thing was happening to me. I guess it's hard for a fellow not to have some fault creep into his character.
Well, I always expect a man to be perfect, and I think he should be.
Oh, I don't think it's possible to be perfect, Emily.
Well, my father is, and as far as I can see, your father is. There's no reason on earth why you shouldn't be too.
Well, I think it's the other way around, that men aren't naturally good, but girls are.
Well, you might as well know right now that I'm not perfect. It's much easier for a man than a girl, because we girls are more nervous. Now, I'm sorry that I said all that about you. I don't know what made me say it.
Emily.
It's not the truth at all. I suddenly feel like it's not important anyway.
Emily, would you like to go for an ice cream soda or something before you go home?
Why, thank you. I would.
Oh, hello, Stu. How are you? Good afternoon, Miss Slocum.
Hello, George. Hello, Emily. What do you have? Why, Emily Webb, what have you been crying about?
She just had an awful scare, Mr. Morgan. She almost got run over by that hardware store wagon. Everybody says that Tom Huckins drives like a crazy man.
Well, now, you take a drink of water, Emily. You've got to look both ways before you cross Main Street these days. Gets worse every year. What do you have?
I'll have a strawberry phosphate. Thank you, Miss Morgan.
No, have an ice cream soda with me, Emily. 2 strawberry ice cream sodas, Miss Morgan.
2 strawberry ice cream sodas. Yes, sir, yes, sir. There are 125 horses in Grover's Corners this minute I'm talking to you. State inspector was in here yesterday, and they've begun bringing in these automobiles. The best thing you can do is just stay home. Why, I don't remember when a dog couldn't go to sleep in the middle of Main Street and nothing could come along to disturb him. Well, 2 strawberry ice cream sodas. Enjoy them. Why, Miss Ellis, yes, what can I do for you?
They're so expensive.
No, don't you think of that. We're celebrating our election. And do you know what else I'm celebrating?
No.
I'm celebrating because I've got a friend who tells me all the things that ought to be told of me.
George, please don't think about that. I don't know what made me say it. It's not true,
No, you stick to it, Emily. I'm glad you spoke to me like you did. But you'll see. I'm gonna change so quick, you bet I'm gonna change. And, Emily, I wanna ask you a favor.
What?
If I go away to State Agriculture College next year, will you write me a letter every once in a while?
I certainly will. I certainly will, George. It certainly seems like being away for 3 years you get out of touch with things. Maybe letters from Grover's Corner wouldn't be so interesting after a while. It's not a very important town compared to all of New Hampshire, but I think it's a nice town.
The day wouldn't come when I wouldn't want to know everything that's happening here. I know that's true, Emily.
Well, I'll try to make my letters interesting.
You know, whenever I meet a farmer, I ask him if he thinks it's important to go to agriculture school to be a good farmer.
Why, George?
Yeah, and some say it's even a waste of time. You can get all of those things anyway out of the pamphlets the government sends out. And my Uncle Luke is getting old. He's about ready for me to take over the farm tomorrow if I could.
My!
And it's like you say, being gone all that time in other places and meeting other people. Gosh, if anything like that can happen, I don't want to go away. I bet new people aren't any better than old ones anyway. They almost never are. Emily, I feel you're as good as a friend as I've got. I don't need to go and meet the people in other towns.
But George, maybe it's important for you to go and learn all about cattle judging and soils and that sort of thing. Of course I don't know.
Emily, I'll make up my mind right now. I won't go. I'll tell Pa about it tonight.
Why, George? I don't see why you have to decide right now. It's a whole year away.
Emily, I'm glad you spoke to me about that fault in my character. What you said was right, but there was one thing wrong in it. And that was when you said for a year I wasn't noticing people, and you, for instance. Why, sure, I always thought about you as one of the chief people I thought of. I always made sure where you were sitting on the bleachers and who you were with, and for 3 days now I've been trying to walk home with you, but something's always got in the way. Yesterday I was standing over by the wall waiting for you, and you walked home with Miss Corcoran.
George, life's awful funny. How could I have known that? Why, I thought...
Listen, Emily, I'm gonna tell you why I'm not going to agriculture school. I think that once you found a person that you're very fond of, a person who's fond of you too and likes you enough to pay attention to your character, well, I think that's just as important as college is, and even more so. That's what I think.
Well, I think it's awfully important too.
Emily,
Yes?
if I do improve and make a big enough change, would you be, could you be,
I am now. I always have been.
so I guess this is an important talk we've been having.
Yes. Yes.
Wait just a minute and I'll walk you home. Miss Morgan, I'll have to go home and get the money to pay you for these.
What's that? George Gibbs, do you mean to tell me?
Yes, but I had my reasons, Miss Morgan. Look, here's my gold pocket watch to keep until I can come back with the money.
Keep your watch. I'll trust you.
I'll be back in 5 minutes.
I'll trust you 10 years, George. Not a day over. Got all over your shock, Emily?
Yes. Thank you, Miss Morgan.
It was nothing.
I'm ready.
Well, now it's time to get on with the wedding. There are an awful lot of things to be said about a wedding. There are an awful lot of thoughts that go on during a wedding. We can't get them all into one wedding, naturally, and especially not a wedding at Grover's Corners, where they're awfully plain and short. In this wedding, I play the minister, so that gives me the right to say a few things about it. For a while now, the play gets pretty serious. You see, some churches say that marriage is a sacrament. Now, I don't quite know what that means, but I can guess. Like Miss Gibbs said a few moments ago that people were made to live 2 by 2. This is a good wedding, but people are so put together that even at a good wedding, there's a lot of confusion way down deep in people's minds, and we thought that ought to be in our play too. Now, the real hero of this wedding isn't on stage at all, and I reckon you can guess who that is. It's like what one of those European fellows said. Every person born into the world is nature's attempt to create the perfect human being. Well, we've seen nature pushing and contriving for some time now. We all know that nature's interested in quantity, but I think she's interested in quality too. That's why I'm in the ministry. And don't forget all of the other witnesses at this wedding. The ancestors, millions of them. Most of them set out to live 2 by 2 also. Millions of them. Well, that's all for my sermon. It wasn't very long anyway.
don't know why on earth I'm crying. I suppose there's nothing to cry about. It came over me at breakfast this morning. There was Emily eating her breakfast like she has done for 17 years, and now she's off eating it inside someone else's house. I suppose that's it. And Emily, she suddenly said, I can't eat another mouthful. And she put her head down and she cried. You know, I gotta say it, there's something downright cruel about sending our girls off into marriage like this. I hope her girlfriends have taught her a thing or two. I know it's cruel, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I went into it as blind as a bat myself. The whole world's wrong. That's what the matter is. Oh, here he comes.
Hey, George! George! All right, that's enough of that. That'll do. There used to be an awful lot of that kind of thing at weddings. Rome and later. We're more civilized now. So they say.
George, what's the matter?
I don't want to go. Why is everybody pushing me so?
My George, you wanted it.
No, Ma, listen to me.
No, George, you're a man now.
Ma, for the last time I asked you, all I want to do is to be a fella.
Now, George, wait, stop it. I'm ashamed of you.
Where's Emily?
You gave me such a turn.
Cheer up, Ma. I'm getting married.
Let me catch my breath a minute.
Now, Ma, you save Thursday nights. Emily and I are coming over to dinner every Thursday night. You'll see. Mom, what are you crying for? Come on, we've got to get ready for this.
Oh, I've never felt so alone in my whole life. And George, over there, looking so... I hate him. I wish I were dead. Papa! Papa!
Emily, now don't get upset.
But Papa, I don't want to get married.
Shh, everything's all right.
Why can't I stay just as I am for a while? Let's go away.
No. Now stop and think a minute.
But don't you remember all the times you used to say, all the times that I was your girl? There must be lots of places we could go. I could work for you. I could keep house.
Shh, you mustn't think such things. You're just nervous. George! Will you come here a minute? Why, you're marrying the best young fellow in the world. George is a fine fellow.
But Papa...
George, I'm giving away my daughter. Do you think you can take care of her?
Mr. Webb, I want to try. Emily, I'm gonna do my best. I love you, Emily. I need you.
If you love me, then help me. All I want is someone to love me.
I'll try. Emily, I'll try.
And I mean forever. Do you hear me? Forever and ever.
Come. They're waiting for us. I know it'll be all right. Come quick.
Do you, George, take this woman, Emily, to be your wedded wife, to have an
Perfectly lovely wedding. Loveliest wedding I ever saw. Oh, I do love a good wedding, don't you? Doesn't she make a lovely bride?
I do.
And do you, Emily, take this man, George, to be your wedded husband?
I don't know when I've been to such a lovely wedding, but I always cry. I don't know why it is, but I always cry. I just love to see young people happy, don't you? Oh, I think it's lovely.
I've married over 200 couples in my day. Do I believe in it? I don't know. Susie marries Brandon, Catherine marries Mark. Millions of them. The cottage, the go-kart, the Sunday afternoon drives in the Ford, the first rheumatism, the grandchildren, the second rheumatism, the deathbed, and the reading of the will. You know, once in 1,000 times it's interesting. Well, let's have Mendelssohn's Wedding March.
Don't they make such a lovely couple? Oh, this is the nicest wedding I've ever been to. I'm sure they'll be happy. That's what I always say. Happiness, that's the great thing. The important thing is to be happy.
That's all for the second act, folks. 10 minutes intermission. This time, 9 years have gone by, friends. It's summer, 1913. Gradual changes in Grover's Corners. Horses are getting rarer, farmers are coming to town in Fords, and most everybody locks their house doors now at night. Ain't been any burglars in town yet, but everybody's heard about them. You'd be surprised, though. On the whole, things don't change much around here. This is certainly an important part of Grover's Corners. This is the new part of the cemetery, and here's your friend, Miss Gibbs, and let me see. There's Mr. Stimson, organist of the Congregational Church. And, oh, there's Miss Soames, who enjoyed that wedding so. You remembered. And many others. Oh, and here's Editor Webb's boy, Wallace, whose appendix burst on a Boy Scout trip to Crawford Notch. Yes, an awful lot of sorrow has sort of quieted up around here. You all know how it is, and time and sunny days and rainy days and snow. We're all awful glad they're in such a beautiful place, and we're coming up here ourselves when our fit's over. Now, there are some things we all know, but we don't take them out and look at them very often. We all know that something is eternal, and it ain't houses, it ain't names, it ain't earth, and it ain't even the stars. We all know in our bones that something is eternal. All of the greatest people who have ever lived have been trying to tell us that for 5,000 years, and yet you'd be surprised at how many people are always losing hold of it. There is something that is eternal way down deep about every human being. Now, you know as well as I do that the dead don't stay interested in us living people for very long. Gradually they lose hold of the earth and the ambitions that they had and the things that they suffered and the people that they loved. They get weaned away from earth. That's the way I put it. Weaned away. And they stay here while the earth part of them burns away. It burns out. And they're waiting. They're waiting for something they feel is coming. And something big and important. And aren't they waiting for that eternal part of them to come out clear? Now, some of the things they're going to say, maybe you'll hurt your feelings, but that's the way it is. Mother and daughter, husband and wife, enemy and enemy, money and miser. All of those terribly important things kind of grow pale around here. And what's left when your memory is gone and your identity, Miss Smith? Now, there are some living people. There's Joe Stoddard, our undertaker, supervising a new made grave. And here comes Grover's Corners girl, who left town to go out west.
Good afternoon, Joe Stoddard.
Good afternoon, good afternoon. Let me see now. Do I know you?
I'm Sam Craig.
Gracious sakes alive. Of all people, I should have known you'd be back for the funeral. You've been away a long time, Sam.
Yes, I've been away for 12 years now. I'm in business out in Buffalo now, Joe. I was in the East when I heard of my cousin's death, so I thought I'd combine things a little and come see the old home. You look well.
Yes, can't complain. Very sad our journey today, Sam.
Yes.
Yes. I always say I hate to supervise when a young person is taken. They'll be here in a few minutes now. I had to come here early today. My son's supervising at the home.
Old Farmer McCarty. I used to do chores for him. He had that lumbago.
Yes, we brought Farmer McCarty here a number of years ago now.
Why, that's my Aunt Julia. I've forgotten that she, of course.
Yes, Doc Gibbs lost his wife 2-3 years ago, about this time, and today's another pretty bad blow for him too.
That's my sister Carrie's girl, Samantha Craig. I'm always uncomfortable when they're around. Simon.
Do they choose their verses much, Joe?
No, not usual. Mostly the bereaved
pretty pickers. Doesn't sound like my Aunt Julia. There's not much of those Hersey sisters left now. Let's see. I wanted to look for my mothers and fathers.
Over there in the crates, Avenue F.
He was the organist of the church. Drank a lot, we used to say.
Yes. Or nobody was supposed to know about it. He'd seen a peck of trouble. Took his own life, you know.
Oh, did he?
Hung himself in the attic. They tried to hush it up, but of course it got around. He chose his own epitaph. You could see it there. It ain't some verse exactly.
Why, it's just some notes of music. What's it say?
Oh, I wouldn't know. It was wrote up in the Boston papers at the time.
What did she die of?
Who?
My cousin.
In childbirth.
The grave's gonna be over there?
Yes, there ain't much more room left over here among the Gibbses, so they're opening up a whole new gift section over by Avenue B. You'll excuse me now. I see they're coming.
Who is it, Julia? My daughter-in-law, Emily Webb. I declare, the road up here must have been awful muddy. What did she die of, Julia? In childbirth? Childbirth. I'd almost forgotten all about that. Mine wasn't like awful and wonderful. Wonderful, was it? I remember Emily's wedding. What a lovely wedding. I remember her reading poems at graduation exercises. She was the brightest girl in school. Well, that's what Principal Wilkins used to say. They called on me at their new farm just before I died. What a perfectly lovely farm. It's on the same road we lived on. Yep, Right Smart Farm. I always liked that hymn. I was hoping they'd play a hymn. Hello? Hello, Mother Gibbs. Hello? It's raining. Yes, dear. They'll be gone soon. Just rest yourself. It seems thousands and thousands of years since I... Papa, remember! That was my favorite hymn. Oh, I wish I'd been here a long time. I don't like being new here. How do you do, Mr. Simpson? How do you do, Emily? Mother Gibbs, George and I turned that farm into just the best place you ever saw. We thought about you all the time. We wanted to show you the new barn and the long cement drinking fountain we got for the stock. We bought it out of the money you left us. I did? Don't you remember the legacy you left us? Why, it was over $350. Yes, Emily. Well, there's a patent device in the drinking fountain so that it never overflows, Mother Gibbs. And it never sinks below a certain level that they have there. It's fine. It won't be the same to George without me. But it's a lovely farm. Life people don't understand, do they? No, dear, not very much. They're sort of shut up in little boxes, aren't they? I feel as if I've known them last 1,000 years. My boy's spending the day at Mrs. Carter's. Oh, Mrs. Carter, my little boy is spending the day at your house. Is he? Yes, he loves it there. Mother Gibbs, we have a Ford too. It never gives any trouble. I don't drive though. Mother Gibbs, when does this feeling go away of being one of them? How long does it? Dear, just wait and be patient. I know. Look, they finished. They're going. Look, Father Gibbs is bringing some of my flowers to you. He looks just like George, doesn't he? Mother Gibbs, I never realized how troubled and how in the dark life people are. That's all that they are. Troubled. Cooler than it was. Yes, that rain's cooled it off a little. Those northeast winds always do the same thing, don't they?
If it's raining, it's a free day blow.
But Mother Gibbs, one can go back. One can go back there again, into the living. I feel it. I know it. Why, for a moment I was thinking about my farm, and for a minute I was back and my baby was sitting on my lap, plain as day. Yes, of course you can. I can go back and live all those days over again? Why not?
All I can say is, Emily, don't.
But it's true, isn't it? I can go back there and live again?
Yes, some have tried, but they soon come back here.
Don't do it, Emily. Don't do it, Emily. It's not what you think it'd be.
But I won't live over a sad day. I'll choose a happy one. I'll choose the day I first knew that I loved George. Why should that be painful?
Well, you not only live it, but you watch yourself living it. And as you watch it, you see the thing that they down there never know. You see the future. You know what's going to happen afterwards.
But is that painful? Why?
It's not the only reason why you shouldn't do it, Emily. Once you've been here longer, you'll understand that our time here is to forget all of that and focus only on what's next and be prepared for what's ahead. Once you've been here longer, you'll understand.
But Mother Gibbs, how can I ever forget that life? It's all I know. It's all I had.
Oh, Emily, it isn't wise. Really, it isn't.
But it's a thing. I must know for myself. I'll choose a happy day anyway.
No, choose an unimportant day. Choose the least important day in your life. It'll be important enough.
Well, then it can't be since I was married. Or since the baby was born. I can choose a birthday at least, can I? I choose my 12th birthday.
All right, February 11th, 1899. A Tuesday. Do you want any special time of the day?
Oh, I want the whole day.
All right, we'll begin at dawn. It had been snowing for several days, but it had just begun to stop the night before. It's clearing up.
There's Main Street, and there's Mrs. Morgan's drugstore before she changed it, and there's the livery stables.
Yes, it's 1899. This is 14 years ago.
Oh, this is the town I knew as a little girl, and look, there's the old white fence that used to be around our house. Oh, I'd forgotten that. Oh, I love it so. Are they inside?
Yes, your mother will be coming downstairs any minute to make breakfast.
Will she?
And you remember, your father had been away for several days, but he had come back on the early morning train.
No.
He had been away at his college to make a speech in western New York at Clinton.
Look, there's Howie Newsom. There's our policeman. But he's dead. He died.
Whoa, Bessie. Bessie. Morning, Bill. Morning, Howie. You're up early. Been rescuing a party down by Polish Town there. Got drunk and lay in the snowdrifts. Thought he was in bed when I shook him.
Why, there's Joe Crowell.
Children, Emily, Wally, time to get up. 7 o'clock.
Mama, I'm here. Oh, how young Mama looks. I didn't realize Mama was ever that young.
You can come and dress by the fire if you would like, but make it quick.
Good morning, Mr. Newsom. It's cold. 10 below by my barn, Mrs. Webb.
Think of it, and keep yourself wrapped up.
Mama, I can't find my blue hair ribbon anywhere.
It's on the dresser, somewhere special. If it was a snake, it would bite you.
Yes. Yes.
Good morning, Bill. Morning, Mr. Webb.
You're up early. Yes, just been back to my college in New York State. Been any trouble here?
Well, I was called up this morning to rescue a Polish fella. Darn near froze to death he was.
We must get it in the paper.
One match.
Papa.
Good morning, Mother.
How it goes, Charles?
Well, fine, I guess. I'm told a few things. Everything alright here?
Nothing special. Howie Newsom said it was 10 below over at his barn.
Yeah, well, it's colder than that in Hamilton. Students' ears are falling off. It ain't Christian. Paper have any mistakes in it?
None that I've noticed. Coffee's ready when you want. Oh, Charles, don't forget, it's Emily's birthday. You remember to bring her something, right?
Oh, yes, I've got something right here. Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
Don't interrupt her now, Charles. She's as slow as it is. Children, hurry up. I don't want to call you again.
I can't bear it. They're so young and beautiful. Why did they ever have to get old? Mama, I'm here. I love you all, everything. I can't look at everything hard enough. Good morning, Mama.
Happy birthday, my dear. And when you were to return, there's some presents waiting for you on the kitchen table.
Oh, Mama, you shouldn't have. I can't. I can't.
Birthday or no birthday, I still want you to eat your breakfast. I want you to eat it nice and so you can grow to be a big, strong girl. That and the yellow paper is something from your Aunt Carrie. I could reckon you know who those postal card albums are from. Found it on the doorstep this morning when I went to go get the milk. George Gibbs. Must have came out pretty darn right early. Quite right nice of him.
Oh, George, I had forgotten that.
Now, chew your bacon good and slow. It will keep you warm on a cold day.
Mama, just look at me 1 minute, as if you really saw me, Mama. 14 years have gone by, Mama. I'm dead. You're a grandmother. I married George Gibbs, Mama. Wally's dead too, Mama. His appendix burst on a camping trip to North Conway. We felt just terrible about it. Don't you remember? But for a moment, we're all together. For a moment, we're all happy. Let's look at one another.
That and the yellow paper is something from the attic I found amongst your grandmother's things. You're old enough to wear it now, and I thought you would like it.
And this is from you? Why, it's lovely. It's just what I wanted. It's beautiful.
Well, I hope you like it. I searched all over for it. Your Aunt Nora couldn't find one in Concord, so I had to send one out from Boston. Wally made you something for you, for your birthday. Made inside his manual training class. He's darn right proud of it. Make sure you make a big fuss. And your father has something for you too. Don't know what it is myself. Oh, here he comes.
Where's my girl? Where's my birthday girl?
I can't go on. It goes by so fast. We don't have time to look at one another. I never realized all that was going on. We never noticed. Take me back up the hill to my grave. But first, wait. One more look. Goodbye. Goodbye, world. Goodbye, Grover's Corner. Goodbye, Mama. And Papa. Goodbye to class ticking. And Mama's sunflowers. Food. And coffee. And new iron dresses. And hot baths. Sleeping. Waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anybody to realize you. Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it? Every moment?
No. Well, the saints and the poets, maybe. They do some.
I'm ready to go back.
Were you happy?
No, I should have listened to you. That's all human beings are. Just blind people.
Look, it's clearing up. The stars are coming out.
Oh, Mr. Stimson, I should have listened to them.
Yes. Now you know. Now you know. That's what it was to be alive. To move about in a cloud of ignorance. To go up and down trampling on the feelings of those about you. To spend and waste time as though you had a million years. To be always at the mercy of one self-centered passion or another. Now you know. That's the happy existence you wanted to go back to. Ignorance and blindness.
Simon Stinson, that ain't the whole truth and you know it. Emily, look at that star. I forgot its name.
My Bordeaux was a sailor, near Mom. He sat on the porch in the evening and out all by name. Yes, sir, wonderful.
A star is mighty good company.
Yes, yes it is. Here's one of them coming.
That's funny.
Ain't no time for one of them to be here.
Goodness sakes. Mother Gibbs,
Yes, Emily?
it's George. It's George.
Poor Joe, who knew the stars, he used to say it took millions of years for a speck of light to get to Earth. Don't see if I could believe it, but that's what he used to say. and millions of years.
Goodness, that ain't no way to behave.
He ought to be home.
Mother Gibbs,
Yes, dear?
they don't understand, do they?
No, dear. They don't understand.
Most everybody is asleep in Grover's Corners. There are a few lights on. Shorty Hawkins down at the depot has just watched the Albany train go by, and at the livery stable, somebody is setting up late and talking. Yes, it's clearing up. There are the stars, doing their old crisscross journeys in the sky. Scholars haven't settled the matter yet, but they seem to think that there are no living beings up there, just chalk or fire. Only this one is straining away. It's straining away to make something of itself. The strain is so bad that every 16 hours, everybody lies down and gets a rest. It's 11 o'clock in Grover's Corners. You get a good rest too. Good night.